Hey friends, welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about What the Foundation from Jones Road, which is a really intriguing product. It is kind of a cheeky name, but not inappropriate given that it doesn't really conform to a lot of ideas of what a foundation should be and look like. It is kind of somewhere in a cream balm formula kind of range, but a little bit different too. It doesn't behave like anything else that I have. I'll just let you know it is really hot out today. I think it's up to 90 degrees now. The air conditioning is going to kick on. In fact, it just did. I'm going to try to edit out the background noise as best as I can, but if you hear like that humming or whatever, it's better than the alternative, which is me melting on camera. We're just going to go with it. So I first heard about this last summer. I think it released, and there was somebody on TikTok who got a lot of traffic for, I think, taking like a big glob of it and just smearing it all over like a face mask or something. And Jones Road is, to backtrack a little bit, Jones Road is a brand started by Bobbi Brown. You've certainly, if you follow makeup at all, seen her name because she was a key makeup artist in the 1990s, really influential. I think the first makeup artist to actually have her own brand, which is still in business. She left a few years ago, and I had the impression that actually she retired, but apparently she still had some ideas about what to be doing, and so that's where Jones Road comes from. It is definitely kind of a mix of things in terms of being a little bit of skincare, a little bit of, kind of on the of the moment, natural makeup look kind of stuff. They have products that kind of split across a range of like very everyday kind of basics to things that feel especially innovative, like this, I would say. And some of the products in particular are really aimed toward people with mature skin. So after that initial social media push, I saw a lot of influencers reviewing it. And for the most part, they all kind of said the same thing, which is, this seems interesting, but it's not for me. It's not a normal foundation. It's not really, other kind of product that I'm used to using. I don't know how to work with it. And so I kind of went, okay, intriguing, but I don't have any reason to take a look at this. And then at the start of the year, Jones Road did this big marketing push, and I saw ads and ads and ads, and they all said the same thing. It's Bobbi Brown, she's sitting in front of the camera just like this, and she says, if you're over 50, and then launches into all the virtues of the Miracle Balm for mature skin. And that's when it clicked for me, and I realized, okay, so no, those influencers, those are 20 and 30-year-olds, and they're all looking at this, and they don't even have the skin it's intended for, which to me, that's really intriguing, right? Like how many products come out and they are not anti-aging products, but they are actually just meant to work with mature skin. And if you have very dry skin, then there's a lot of overlap in your needs between those who are postmenopausal, for example, and have the particular decrease in elasticity and thinness and all of that, and the very dry skin that can come with that. If you're in my similar like rosacea, eczema, etc. sphere, then there's a good chance that something like this will actually be of interest to you. Especially, I would say, if you're over 35 or 40. I think that the dry skin, speaking from my own experience, the dry skin that I had in my 20s and even early 30s really wasn't even the same nature as what I deal with now. And I'm in my mid-40s now. I would not describe myself as having mature skin. I suspect that my needs are going to change again as I get into my 50s, which I've got about 5 years to go. And so I can't really speak for that experience, just what I see kind of on this side of it, where again, my skin became radically drier going into my 40s, and a lot of things about the surface of it and how it responded to products really changed. And so it was those ads that made me think, there is something here that's relevant to me that I should look at. And so I went and I ordered myself, the lightest shade that was available of What the Foundation. And I got it and I went, no. they only launched with an initial 12 shades, which is just not a big shade range at all, even for something that does in some respects behave a little bit like a tinted moisturizer, in that you can sheer it out, you know, you can put on a lighter layer of it. So there's a little bit of flexibility there, but not enough really to make that few shades work for everybody. And for me, really what I found was that, I'm going to swatch it so you can see, this is the shade Porcelain. So this was the lightest shade that they had available. You can see, like, comparing that sort of beige tone, right? It doesn't look as strong on the skin as it does in the jar. But if I put it on my hand and see if I can not catch the reflection here from the light, it ends up being a little too warm. And the way that it sits on my skin, even when it dries down, and I find that it dries down a little bit lighter, that ends up being really, it makes it look like all of my skin is sort of the same depth as the parts that are the reddest with rosacea, and that's absolutely not the effect that I want. So it just ended up being a couple shades too deep for me. And so I was planning to review this anyhow, because I do think as a formula it's really interesting and really relevant, like I said, for people who have similar skin issues. But as I was planning to do this, I saw them teasing on their social media that there were going to be some new shades coming out. And fortunately, the 4 shades that they added actually add a lot of depth to what's available in terms of undertones, and also I think extend the ends of the shade range just a little bit. Now, I think that they could go from 16 into, let's say, add another 4 to 6 and really hit what they need to, but they're starting to get into where it has to be in terms of hitting enough undertones for each part of the shade range. And I don't think that the shade range is poorly distributed in terms of like light to dark, you know, from the palest to the deepest skin tones. However, those undertones really matter so much, whether you're going to sheer it out or not. And so I appreciate that they're continuing to work on that, and I'm hoping that as they get more feedback and have more people trying this, they're going to continue to expand that shade range so that it really does have something that'll work for everybody. So here's the new lightest shade. It is called Alabaster, which is sort of funny. It makes me think of Galatea. I don't know. Do I feel alabaster? At the moment, I feel very pink. And again, that's because it is so hot out. We're in mid-May and it's just like roasting out there. I don't hate it, but you know, despite trying to stay hydrated, I'm a little flushed. One other thing I just realized I should say about the packaging is that it does come with this little lid to seal the jar. Do not throw this out. This really does help keep it airtight so that you're not going to have things dry out or spoil faster or whatever. Looking at the consistency of this, I almost feel like I should be keeping it in the fridge. I'm going to trust them that they included appropriate preservatives. I'll be keeping an eye on it, and I'm obviously not keeping it in the warmest part of the house, you know. Just something to think about with any of your foundations. I know I see people on YouTube and influencers who have this, like, you know, 5-year collection of foundation. Don't do that to yourself. Even if the product doesn't go moldy, there are other things that are going to break down. And a thing that we often don't think about with these formulas is that there's a pH level that needs to be maintained in order to keep it, you know, to keep the product functioning the way that it was supposed to and not irritate your skin. And those pH buffers are going to be one of the things that break down over time. And so you may have a product that doesn't look bad, but because of that kind of natural thing that's going to happen to any formula, over time you may find that it causes more irritation or that it doesn't perform the same way. And it's, in my opinion, again, as somebody in my 40s, I just don't think it's worth messing around with that anymore. Like, you know, don't buy yourself, you know, 6 bottles of $80 foundation you can't get through in a year, you know? Like, I know that for some people that can be really fun, but I just don't think that it's a good use of your money. And I think that it's likely to get you in trouble in terms of your skincare. So that's a digression. Anyhow, what I'm going to do is very carefully take this off, not drop it on the floor. So it really doesn't take very much to build up some coverage with this. I'm going to take a brush They have one that you can buy that's not quite this shape, but kind of in the same ballpark. This is from e.l.f. It just says foundation brush on it. I'm not sure that this is still available, but if you look at the shape, something that's like this but has a little bit more of that like angled edge could be nice. Mostly I like this for getting the product without just sticking my finger back in there all the time. So I'm going to put a little bit onto my cheek, just dab it on. You can see that as it starts to blend in. I'll just smooth it out a little bit over the area. And then I'm going to take another brush. I'll take this fluffier brush. It's the e.l.f. Complexion Duo, and just use that to buff this out on my skin. And I don't always do this with a foundation because, you know, you can get a lot of like product buildup and creasing in your under eye area. But with this, I am going to take it into that area because I kind of, because this really does act like a sort of thicker, now my cat is going at it. Sorry, if you hear meowing, that is a large tabby, and he thinks that it is dinner time. It's not. And you can see that as I really buff that in, it's just blending right in smoothly, giving me this really hydrated finish. Okay, so that's one cheek here. And you can see right now this isn't a lot of coverage, but it's actually more buildable than I expected. So I am, once I've got a layer of this on, I'm going to build things up just a little bit more on my cheeks so that you can see that, because that's a property I wasn't really expecting from this. And I find it really interesting, you know? All right, same thing, just a little bit of product here. And spread it onto my face. I think I got a little bit more this time, so I'll spread it out more. And then I'll take my brush and just buff it in. I don't keep my AC turned up too far, just kind of to bring it in the, you know, tolerable range. So it is a little warm in here. And so when I tried this a few days ago in 70-degree temperature, it did take a little bit more effort to buff it out than it is right now. Oh, and in terms of base, I'm using the e.l.f. the e.l.f. copy of the Supergoop. I forget the name exactly. I'll make sure that it's listed in the description. But I have that underneath, and so that tends to give me a pretty smooth base for things too, which may be helping with the blending. Use a little bit left on the brush here. All right, so you can see this nice hydrated finish. And I do think that this shade works pretty well for me. And so here you can see I have some coverage, but there's still a fair amount of pinkness coming through. So because of that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take just a little bit more onto my cheeks and see if we can build it up enough to neutralize that a little bit more. All right. Just spread a little bit more in this area. And again, just blend it out. Now, if you watched my review of the Kosas BB Burst, you know that in general, I find that tinted moisturizers can end up being quite streaky. And one of the things I think that they did really well is keep the sort of pigment load in the formula appropriate to the sort of foundation cream that they have here. I think that works out really nicely. And, you know, what you see here is it looks quite concentrated. And so I just really appreciate that about this. But like I said earlier, you know, the calling it what the foundation is funny, but it's also, I think, appropriate because it does behave really differently. It's potentially going to appeal to, you know, maybe a different kind of market than some other foundations. But I really do think even if you, you know, you're somebody who is wearing makeup, does have a foundation, you know, that you're happy enough with, I still think this is worth having a look at. But especially if you're, you know, if you've had a point here where you're finding that you just can't get foundation to sit on your skin the way that you want it to, you know, as you've gotten older, like, especially if that's kept you from wearing makeup when you want to be, I think you're going to find this pretty promising. I feel like I look so serious today, and it's really just that it's warm, and I'm trying to stay on track because there is no way I'm going to manage to refilm this if I don't just get it done. So I am extremely glowy right now. And that's why I picked the particular SPF that I did. You know, I often like to use the e.l.f. Flow Glow for that luminosity. But today, if I did that, you know, we would be so bright you can see me from space, right? Okay. So I think that looks pretty good to me. You can see I haven't completely eliminated all of the pink on my cheeks and everything, but we have toned it down a fair bit. And I think as it sits, two things I know are going to happen as it sits. One of them is that the formula is going to start to set down. It doesn't, at least on my very dry skin, it doesn't stay like this kind of, you know, moisturized, tacky as this. It does set down a fair bit, which I find tends to smooth it out and make it really look a lot more smoothed into the skin. And I think that improves the sort of appearance of the coverage. And also because I have really reactive skin and it gets flushed from touching it and also, you know, from being very warm, sitting with it a little bit is going to allow that kind of to come down. And I think give us a better sense of where the coverage is. So we'll let that happen. And then I think this kind of warm weather calls for a brow gel. And so I am going to make use of the e.l.f. Wow Brow. And I have this, I believe, in Taupe. I know I've said before that I think a lot of tinted brow gels can just look a little too heavy or dramatic on me, but I think today calls for that. So let's go ahead and, one of the other sort of lessons learned I've had with this is try to keep it out of your eyebrows because it does get kind of gooey and a little bit harder to brush things out. But I think I managed okay today. Just fluff those out a little bit. I just turned my lights down a notch. Hopefully that will keep the highlights from getting blown out with just the level of reflection that's happening here, which is delightful, but may obscure some details. I haven't used this particular product a whole lot. I keep forgetting to check if they have a blonde option, because that would be my preference. All right, just a little bit more definition. All right, I had to change out my camera battery, and I'm hoping that I didn't mess up the framing too much. But yeah, that means that this has also had a moment to kind of settle further. It still feels a little tacky to the touch. We'll just see how it's doing by the time I finish with this. So now that I have that base layer on, I have brows. I don't feel like I need a lot of concealer today, but I do have their face pencil. This is in the shade 1. And one thing that I think is kind of cool is when they did the shade extension, they posted a chart that matches the face pencil to the different shades, which is good if you're going to buy both of those, but also if you were just kind of intrigued about this, you could buy the pencil and then figure out what shade you want. And I do think that their return policy seems pretty reasonable. And if you're really not sure what shade to pick of any of this, they encourage people to go ahead and email them too and ask. So that's an option. There aren't a lot of retail options for this, but they do seem to have some little shops or pop-up shops that they're doing. And I haven't looked very closely at it because I don't think any of them are near where I live, but that's also something to have a look at if you're kind of curious but just not sure if this is something you want to try yet. And I'll just put a little bit in the under eye area right here. It's the areas where I'm sort of most translucent and have the most of that sort of underlying color coming through. I'm trying so hard right now not to scratch my nose. It's itching right here. All right, today is heavy on the interruptions. I just had to adjust everything again. So, I'm hoping that I don't have too much inconsistency in how this is all going. And my cat is even more convinced that we are at dinner time, and it is still not. So, all right, let me figure out where I was. I think still a little tacky. Brows are done. The next thing that I was going to do is just a little bit of bronzer. So I'm going to take this Glossier Cloud Paint in Swept and just dab a little bit of it on, blend it out, and I'll probably just speed through this part since I have used it before. It's just a little bit of depth while still keeping that fairly natural look. Nothing too dramatic, just a little bit of color. The last thing, since this is about as much as I feel like layering on my face today, is to go ahead and just add a nice balmy lip product. And since in my previous video where I was playing with the Glossier bronzer, I didn't get a chance, or I decided not to go ahead and wear this, so I am gonna make use of it. This is the Sephora something shine lipstick. I've forgotten again, but I will definitely check. But again, I'll make sure that I list that. But I do remember the shade name because I was like, how could I possibly forget? This is Cosmic Coral. So I think this will be a nice bright pop of color for this hot weather. So there we go. Nice, sheer, summery kind of shade. So with that, I think that is where I'm going to leave it. And then the last thing that I'm going to do before I wrap up is just to lightly powder some of the areas that I think are likely to wear off. And so I have the Kosas Cloud Set powder in Airy, and then a fluffy concealer brush. This is also from e.l.f. It is their Flawless Concealer Brush. So I'll just take a little bit of this, tap it out, and very just lightly touch it in this sort of corner. And I think, if you have drier skin, using a more targeted approach to powdering really can make a big difference in terms of just not getting too heavy of an effect, while still giving you a little bit of maybe mattification in areas that you want to de-emphasize. And so I think a lightweight powder like this can be a really nice thing to have in your arsenal. All right, there we go. We're getting closer to that more set down appearance that I'm expecting with this. So some things that I thought of that I should mention. I do think that if you're going to use this as more than just a tinted moisturizer that you really aren't adding anything else to, then you're going to have the easiest time working with something like a liquid or a cream bronzer, blush, etc. Jones Road does have a liquid bronzer. I haven't tried it, so I can't really speak for it one way or another. I think you could also make use of something like the plethora of bronzing drops that are on the market to add a little bit of depth to this too, if that's what you're looking for. So I'm very curious about how this performs in hot weather like this, you know. It just happened to turn out in terms of scheduling. I certainly wasn't planning on doing this review in 90-degree weather, but since we have it, what I'm going to do is just in a little bit, I'll go out on my patio. I'll, sit in the shade for 10 or 20 minutes, however long I actually feel comfortable, and I'll take some pictures, put them on my Instagram, and that way we can see kind of how it's holding up. I think it's probably going to feel a little just more wet on my skin than I would like in hot weather. But yeah, I think there's a potential that it actually performs reasonably well, and that if I wanted to make use of a little bit more powder to help keep it in place, that it wouldn't be a bad thing to consider in warmer weather, at least if you live in a climate where you're going to have more of that throughout the year. So for me, that's just a little bit of an experiment. But yeah, if you watched my other videos, I don't recommend things lightly, but if I like something, I'm gonna definitely speak up about it and let you know my enthusiasm, so that, maybe you'll have a sense of whether that's going to be good for you too. Now that they have the shade extension, I'm really glad that I went and, picked that up, had another look at it, because I had a suspicion that I was really going to like it if I could get a shade to work for me. And I think that this is a pretty good choice, So let me know if you have tried it, what you think about this, if it was on the useful side of things or just a little too much, It's definitely a product that is going to be for some people and really not for other people. If you have oily skin, like I said in the beginning, I wouldn't really encourage you to consider this. There are just so many other products that are out there right now that are probably going to be a better fit. But, to bring it back to the beginning, like if you are somebody who has intensely dry skin, you need a heavier moisturizer throughout the year to be comfortable, then this is a product that I think could be really interesting and useful to you. In terms of just giving you something that's comfortable, that feels more like skincare, that really does handle dry skin well, and can give you just a little bit more of this glowing, hydrated kind of appearance, that we often want and enjoy. I hope this was a useful review for you to get a sense of whether this is something that you're interested in. And especially if you have similar skin needs to me, then I encourage you to subscribe, stick around. I will be continuing to do foundation reviews that really focus in on those particular needs and how products might work best for them. And I would love to have you here. So with that, I'm just going to say thank you for hanging out with me today and take care of yourself. I'll see you next time. Bye.